I, 20, have been planning to move out of my family's house with my boyfriend, 20, for a few months now, for various reasons. Not wanting to be around my family is somewhat a factor, but I mostly want to be closer to the city, where I can go into my lab and my job and eventually classes without having to endure a very long and costly transit to and from the city. My parents are extremely conservative Asian people. They would not approve of me moving out alone in the first place, much less moving in with my boyfriend together. I know I should have given them more notice, but I was just afraid. I have worked up the courage to finally tell my mom that I was having severe mental health issues and that I needed help before, and she told me that I was weak for thinking that and that everyone thought that, so I needed to grow up. That set me on a path of health decline that lasted for a few years, and ever since then it's been incredibly difficult to open up to her about anything important in my life. They also treat me like I am a child all the time, despite all the research and preparation I do to be reasonable and knowledgeable when I come to them with a problem or plan, so I have lots of built-up trauma regarding that. When I told them the news, my mom lost it and cried for 3 hours, and when my dad found out, he asked me why I ever thought this was a good idea and if this was normal to me. I responded that I never thought or said it was a good idea, but that the reason I couldn't say anything was because I was afraid, so deathly afraid of being cruelly turned down or not taken seriously again, of being treated like I didn't know what I was doing. He then cut me off, told me I was to never speak to him again, and slammed the door so hard he broke it. He cancelled my data plan, tuition payments, and car insurance, which I understood and took as a reasonable response to a shocking piece of news. But I was stunned to see that he had cancelled my health insurance as well, which I took to mean that in the era of COVID, he would rather have me die than disobey him and make decisions without consulting him. I don't think of a man who wants to kill me as my dad anymore. I thought that if I told my parents and opened up about feeling afraid to come to them with important life decisions, they would come from at least some place of empathy and hear me out despite the shock they felt at the sudden news. I don't know if I even have the right to distinguish what was right from what was wrong at this point. Leaving the house was something I needed to do, and although I know the path I took wasn't ideal, I felt that it was the only thing I could do. However, I feel horrible now because my mom is incredibly upset and the man who used to be my father does not love me anymore because of what I did. I don't know how to feel and if I should apologize to both of them. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. As someone also from a strict Asian household whose dad tried to kick me out at 16 because I chose a college major without first consulting him and ensuring his approval, you're not the idiot. You're not the idiot for being your own person. You're not the idiot for doing what you know to be the best for you. You're not the idiot for being strong enough to make the difficult decision to plan ahead and make steps towards independence. You're not the idiot for making a tough decision with the constraints that you had. Not the idiot. It sounds to me like your parents don't value you as a person, they only value your compliance as an extension of themselves. What you've done is drop the rope, cut the strings, and taken your first step toward something called reparenting. You have inherent value just by existing. It was not a reasonable response for your father to cut off all your accounts and insurance out of retaliation and punishment, and you are likely to correct in believing he does not love you, but he probably never did, unfortunately. Not the idiot. They've lost control over you and now want to punish you because how dare you not let them control you anymore. See this as a blessing in disguise. They're doing everything in their power to try to get you to come crawling back, begging them to give you back your privileges. Don't give them the satisfaction. Independence can be tough, but that's how adulting can be sometimes. By canceling everything, your abusers have essentially set you free. Remember, you aren't in the wrong. They're essentially having a temper tantrum. So I work in public transport for my hometown, and it usually gets busy this time of year. A family of 4 enters the tram, and one of them had an expired college travel pass that I take as I'm supposed to, but offer travel anyway as compensation. A little later on in the journey I look over towards them and see a younger child in the family, around 8 years old, standing with one foot on a seat and his other one on the seat opposite, across the tram's walkway whilst he held on to the above handrail. This was all, whilst we were moving. I shout over once, and the kid keeps laughing, but gets down. His mother barely said a word to him. In the space of 5 minutes, I've had to call out to the kid 2 more times as he was standing on seats again, and the mother kept on ignoring the child. After the third time I snapped and stopped the tram at the next stop and told them all to leave. The mother thought it was a joke at first, but soon realized I was serious. She demanded a refund, which I honored, as I figured if I give her the £3.30 back, she can't argue that she has a right to be there. She claims she will phone my manager. She's never been spoken to or treated this harshly on a tram before, and that all of a sudden the kid has hyperactivity disorder and I should be more compassionate. The driver comes over to ask what's wrong as I'm holding the door open for them. I explain I saw him climbing 3 times, whilst the mother did nothing to stop him, and he nodded and went back to his driver's seat to continue the journey. They left. Some passengers said I was in the right, but deep down I felt like an idiot afterwards. I went through the proper procedure in the office, reported the interaction, and filled out the report form with my side of events. As far as I'm concerned, I did my job but feel bad about it. Did the kid have hyperactivity disorder? Was I too harsh? Am I the idiot? If you had stopped suddenly, the child would likely have fallen and could have been seriously injured. Regardless of whether a child has a condition like hyperactivity disorder, it is a parent's responsibility to ensure that their child is not endangering themselves or others. Since the parent refused to take action, you were forced to in order to protect the child from the parent's lack of attention and to protect the other passengers. Not the idiot and really doing your job. The mother would no doubt have blamed you if you had braked when the child went flying. Not the idiot, it is a seriously health concern. The kid may have had hyperactivity disorder, but that doesn't mean he should be let to his own devices and possibly put himself in danger. The mother is there and it's her responsibility to keep him in check and safe. You did nothing wrong and if anything handled the situation amazingly. I really dislike when parents let their kids do things like this and think it's okay. What if he hurt himself badly? She would probably be screaming at you and crap, even though she never did anything to prevent it. Not the idiot. Pre-COVID, my kid and I took about 4 or 6 hours worth of transit every week, and since he was 2 years old, he's known that he is to keep his bum on the seat, or he can sit on his knees to look out the window if he holds tight to the seat back, or he can sit nicely in my lap. He's 5 and he knows the rules of the bus or SkyTrain, like the subway, but about 2 stories in the air for most of its length, down pat. It's not a playground, it's a moving vehicle without seatbelts, and if the bus has to stop suddenly, I don't want him flying down the aisle and getting hurt. I, 19, am a university student from Germany. Because of obvious reasons, we now have online classes via Zoom. Thus far everything's going pretty fine and most of my professors are nice. All except for one prof. He is in his late 50s, early 60s, and absolutely awful. I know the term boomer is getting thrown around a lot these days, but honestly, this prof is the definition of a boomer in a super negative way. He is smug, arrogant, interrupts students all the time, and thinks he and his opinions are superior to everyone else's. The class he teaches is heavily opinion-based, so if a student slightly disagrees with the prof's opinion, he'll argue with the student until they finally give in. His class isn't much fun to participate in. A couple of weeks ago he decided that we have to do presentations for his class. We don't get grades for this presentation. These presentations are basically a recap of what we learned last lessons, but with additional information. Everybody has to present once. Last lesson it was one particular girl's turn to present her results. Unfortunately, the girl put some unnecessary information about our topic in her presentation, which led to our prof losing it at her. While she was giving her presentation, the prof interrupted her mid-sentence and just started yelling. Angrily. It came out of nowhere, and everybody, including the girl giving the presentation, was shocked. The prof yelled, "What are you thinking? This isn't what you are supposed to be talking about. Seriously, do you think our topic has anything to do with whatever you're talking about? Answer me." The girl tried to explain herself, but our prof just cut her off and told her to finish her presentation. The girl was clearly shaken up, and her voice was shaking for the rest of her presentation. After the girl had finished, the prof said, "You know, I'd really like to fail you for what you just did, but unfortunately I promised not to give grades on this." He paused for a couple of seconds, and then he started yelling, again. He basically yelled that this was one of the worst presentations he had ever witnessed, and how he can't comprehend that the girl thought what she was talking about was important. It was low-key insulting, and his behavior was so erratic that it was frightening. The girl was really trying to hold back her tears when he was finished, and then the prof said, "Well, I am kind of famous for how tough I am on my students." After class ended I was still shaken up and now I don't know what to do. I'm thinking about reporting the prof to his superiors for what he did, but I don't know if that's taking things too far. I also can't reach out to the girl who got yelled at to check if she's okay with that because I don't have her email address and she doesn't have social media. So, would I be the idiot if I reported my professor? Not the idiot. Please report him. Entitled tenure profs think they can take students for a ride, but this was blatantly unprofessional and disrespectful. If you know the girl, please discuss it with her and encourage you to go to the administration together. Because honestly, at least, no prof should be yelling at his students. This is college, not elementary school. Not saying you should yell at little kids, but one is a room full of tiny 7-year-olds sticking pencils everywhere, and the other are legal adults paying for their education. Not the idiot. That's such awful behavior from a professor. I think it's an excellent idea to talk to some administration about this. Usually, professors like this may already have a complaint against them. His gloating about how he's known on campus makes me think that there have been other students who have had horrible interactions. Your report could really help any choices that have to be made about that professor. Not only did he humiliate and scream at a student, but he also terrified his other students as well. I hope you can get in contact with that poor girl. Not the idiot. I have had 2 teachers in my past that were unprofessional to such a significant degree that their actions negatively impacted my life for years. One I wish I had reported, the other I wish I had confronted sooner than I did. Professors are in a role of authority and, like any such role, need to be able to self-reflect and moderate themselves. If they are not doing so, they need to be reminded of their responsibility to their students. They are being paid to educate, and abusive behavior only gets in the way of a student's ability to learn. A bit of background here, I'm a teenager, 17, who works a part-time job, so if you're suggesting I buy and cook my own food, I would say I am more than happy to. When I was 13, my sister, 14 now, 10 then, went vegan after learning about animal slaughter and all that kind of stuff. We respected her decision but continued eating meat ourselves and found substitutes she liked. Recently, my sister showed my parents, 48 and 45, a documentary about the environmental impacts of eating meat and inside the slaughterhouse where animals are killed. They decided to go vegetarian, however, they later learned that dairy is violating cows, according to their words, and decided to go vegan. I honestly didn't care so long as I could continue eating my pepperoni pizzas and pork burgers. However, they began to tell me I should go vegan too. I politely refused, but every now and then they did suggest I did, and I was contributing to the problem of eating meat. I politely refused and told them I respect their choice, but I am sticking to my meat and dairy. Last week, they announced they were going to stop buying meat as it wastes money and start me on a transition to veganism by gradually removing animal products from my diet. I said I want to continue eating meat and dairy, but they were not having any of it. They told me it's time to stop contributing to animal abuse and I should just give it a go. I decided to buy my own meat from now on using the money from my part-time job. I'm doing cookery class at school and I am good at it. I bought my meat and put it in the freezer. A few days ago, after I had eaten meals without meat such as chili, without the meat, and regular pizza as we just tend to eat them anyway, I decided to cook my pork burgers. My family were having vegan burger substitutes which I was fine with. I set the table and put my burger on my plate. They saw it and asked me what I was doing. I said since they weren't going to buy or cook me meat I would buy my own. They flipped out and told me a whole new load of lies about veganism. Veganism stops cancer, heart disease, and prevents pandemics, but I decided to have my burger anyway. We had dinner and afterwards my parents told me I needed to embrace the vegan diet. I told them I will eat what I want and they don't have to pay or cook it. Since then, meal times have been quite quiet, except when we eat meals which happen to not contain meat or dairy, where one of my parents usually says I should just go vegan full time. My sister honestly doesn't care what diet I do though and says it's my choice, but my parents think I am contributing to the problem. Am I the idiot? I would say not the idiot, you are well within your right to not hold their same values or diets. There are sadly issues with every industry. The vegetables they eat can be harvested from migrant workers being paid $2.50 an hour. The tofu they eat may be packaged in a plastic that will destroy the ocean. The sugar they buy may contribute to pollution due to the factories it's made in. What I'm trying to say is your family is picking and choosing battles. And act holier than thou if you aren't harvesting everything yourself. I'm a meat eater too, and I can't imagine. Not the idiot. I'm veggie and my husband isn't. At home, he tends not to eat a whole lot of meat cause it's easier to cook for both than individually, and there are health benefits to not eating red meat. But if he wants meat he can buy it, and when we go out he'll eat whatever we want. We respect each other's decision and go from there. If you're buying your own meat products and still joining in with family mealtime, don't know if that's a big deal to your family, but a defo is in mine, then there shouldn't be an issue. Not the idiot. I have run into this argument multiple times with my vegan friends and family. I always ask them how they think their vegetables grow. When they look at me with confusion, I say with animal manure. Watch the documentary Biggest Little Farm on Netflix. Ethical animal farming is integral to our agriculture. You need a certain amount of organic material to return to the soil in order for mass vegetable growth to be successful. Whether or not your family likes it, the vegetables they buy are probably not 100% vegan. My daughter, 22, recently announced her engagement to her boyfriend, 26, of 3 years. Not long after that, she called my wife and I to tell us she's dropping out of college. She basically told us that she wasn't too happy with her major, which to be honest I can believe. She never came across as very enthusiastic about her studies like my other daughter, 25, was. Her new fiancé comes from quite a well-to-do family. His dad basically owns a semi-regional chain of do-it-yourself stores, and he's worked in various management positions since he graduated and is in line to inherit the company. My daughter and him have decided that since he basically has 100% job security and she wasn't too happy doing what she was doing, that it would be better for her to drop out and either get a position at the company or just stay at home. They haven't decided yet. I'm fine with this, my wife not so much. She always wanted both our daughters to be career-minded in life like she's been. She also doesn't like the fact that we have financially supported our daughter through her time in college and she's not getting a degree now. My daughter basically told my wife that she's an adult woman now and has made her decision whether my wife likes it or not. I backed my daughter up. I told my wife she can't expect her to just be a mini-me and that the whole point of us helping her out financially was so she could be happy in life, which she's decided means taking a more traditional path. My wife is still pissed off a few days later, but I'm still standing up for her. No idiots here. You're right that it's your daughter's decision. Neither you nor your wife are idiots based on your opinions. However, I think that your way of looking at things is short-sighted because marriages end and even great businesses can go belly up. Then what? She'll be unemployed and without a degree. Granted, she can always get some job, but probably not a job where she can support a lifestyle she'll become accustomed to. Just something for you guys to consider. You are the idiot, not for allowing your daughter to make her own adult decisions, but for not counseling her on all the serious lifelong risks of challenges of exiting the workforce at 22 to be completely financially dependent on a partner. This is something that could seriously bite her in the back if something happens to him, or if something happens to his business or industry, or if they split up in 5 or 10 or 20 years. Lifelong alimony is not a thing anymore in most countries. Support for a disabled spouse or special needs child is incredibly expensive. No idiots here. This is tough. Both sides are right. No future is ever safe. Companies go under all the time. Divorce happens. Your daughter is 22. How far away is she from finishing? If she doesn't have to work, maybe she could just slow down and finish at her own pace. I think she's likely come so far that it would be silly to stop so close, but you can't make her, and she is an adult. You aren't wrong either to not let this be a blow up because ultimately you can't undo her decision.